Hey, I'm Pat, and in this video I will be explaining GUI and how you can use GUI in your games. Basically explaining the basics of GUI, how to create it, and going over a few events for GUI, things like that. So the first thing, I have talked about this multiple times in previous videos, but I'll go over in this video just to recap. So basically, inside of Explorer here you have the StarterGui, and the way StarterGui works is that any GUIs that are inside of it, when a player joins the game, any GUI inside it, all the GUIs inside of it. So when a player joins the game, all the GUIs inside of StarterGui will be cloned and parented to their player GUI, which is underneath their player instance in players. So when you're referencing GUI, you should never really be referencing StarterGui. You should either be doing a local player GUI, or you could be using a script.parent to reference different parts of the GUI. So the way you start off is usually you have a screen GUI. There's also billboard GUIs and surface GUIs, which I'm not really going to go over, but those can be put into parts. Billboard GUI kind of shows like above a part for something like a name tag, and surface GUI is kind of like text on a part for, like, you know, like something like a sign or something, right? So for a screen GUI, the way that this works is really there's not much to the screen GUI. All it really is just something that basically holds all of our GUI elements, all the different instances of our GUI. It can either be enabled or disabled, which will change whether or not the elements inside of it are all visible. So if it's disabled, then you won't be able to see any parts of the GUI, but if it's enabled, then it will be visible and work right. And then there's also this reset on spawn. This is a very important property that can cause some issues sometimes. Basically what this is when the player dies, it will reset the GUI back to its original state. And you can turn this off so that when they die, it won't reset it back. It can cause issues with scripts and things like that, so it's something to keep in mind that this property does exist. Usually you want to name your screen GUI just to kind of keep it organized. So what I'm really going to be showing you to start off is like a color generator. So we're just going to call this color generator. I think I spelled that right. So now what I'm going to show you is the basic, this is a frame. My icons might be different, but all the different instances and everything that I'm creating will have the same name for you, right? So it shouldn't be too big of a deal. So we have a frame, and the way a frame, really, its name is self-explanatory in the sense that it's a frame that will hold a bunch of things inside of it. And you can see, really, it's just a big square. So it's a big square, it has a background color, and you can maybe even tell that it has a little outline. So if we click on it, we can change its border size pixel, which is the outline. If we step it up to 5, you can see we get that outline a little bit better. I don't usually like using an outline, so I'll set it to 0. You can also change, you know, the background color and everything, all inside of the properties, right? You could also do all these with the script. But one thing to take note is when you're looking at position, its values are definitely not normal. This is not a vector 3 or even really a vector 2. This is actually a UDIM2 is basically what it's called. And what happens is it has 2 x values and 2 y values. Obviously this is 2-dimensional, so there's only x and y. But for x there's scale, and for y, or for x there's scale and offset, y there's scale and offset. So the difference between scale and offset is offset's actually pixels. So if you think about like the resolution of your monitor or something, it might be like 1080p by 1980 or something like that. But what that really means is it's 1000 or 1080 pixels by like 1980 pixels, whatever. And you can even see right here, it tells you how big it is in pixels. So the thing about offset is that it will not adjust to different screen sizes. So if you have like a really small like a tablet or a phone, and you say this GUI is made for 1080p, a 1080p monitor, it's obviously going to be massive on that phone because the phone doesn't have as many pixels on the screen as a 1080p monitor would, right? So that's where scale comes into play. Scale really is percentage based, so it takes up a percentage of the screen. So it doesn't take up necessarily a specific amount of pixels on your screen, but instead it takes up a percentage based off the resolution of your screen. And you can see it's actually decimal, it's not really a percentage, but obviously if we were to multiply this by 100, then it would be 35.9%, which is a percentage. So if we do 1, just to show you an example, oh, this is position, I want to do size. So we're going to set its position to on the X to 0. And we're getting rid of the offset because usually you want to use scale because it scales with the screen size. And you see if we put 1, it takes up the entire X scale of the screen pretty much. So if we multiply this by 100, it'd be 100%. So it takes 100% of the X width, right? And you'll see if we go ahead and change this, it will adjust to basically the size of our screen. And you can also see down at the right here that the amount of pixels it's taking up is adjusting due to the change in the size of the screen, right? So that's good to know. And you can also do the same thing with Y. So we can make it 1, and then if we also make its position back to 0, you'll see it take up the entire screen. But the thing about scale with Y is that it's not, 1 doesn't actually take up the entire screen. Usually there's like a little 10% top bar at the top that doesn't get covered. So if you really wanted to take up the entire screen, you can do 1.1, which will make it big enough, and then you have to do set its position to -0.1, so that way it's moved up a little bit so it covers the top completely. And you can't really see the empty top bar when you're editing in Studio, but once you play the game you can tell that it's missing. But we're gonna make this back down to 5 or whatever. And you can also adjust the GUI in here just the same, and once you set it so it only uses scale, then once you change its size here, it will know to use scale instead of offset. And the same for the position pretty much. Alright, so now we went over sizing UI and what a frame is really. Obviously you want to know something more important like adding an image or a button or text. So we're going to add a button to our frame. We're going to use a text button. If you want it to be like a picture, we could use a image button, but I'm using a text button. And yeah, I'll make it a dark color. Something to take into account is that scale is based off of its parent. So now that this button is inside the GUI, 100% of the X will be 100% of the X size of the frame. But something like offset doesn't take that into account, but scale does. So just something to keep in mind with how that works. And now we got a little button here. I want to make this frame a little bit darker because it's way too much for me. And another thing I want to go over is constraints for GUI. So I'll just go over corner. So we got UI corner, which basically just rounds the edges so it's not all sharp on the edges. And you can see also the corner radius, either your offset or scale. You know, obviously you want to use scale, that's better. So I'm gonna make this something that looks nice. Obviously we don't want sharp edges, that's kind of ugly, so we're gonna put it also into our text button, and it will work just the same on the text button, but apparently it's not working right now. There we go. It's a little too much though, so we'll do it like 1.5 maybe. So that looks pretty good. And now I'm gonna go over how you would like edit your text button. So usually with text there's a bunch of different options. Usually you got, you know, your font face. You can either make it bold or italic. I usually like to make it bold, and usually my font is Gotham SSM. And usually I use text scaled because that way the text will adjust for the size based on the size of the screen, right? The text size will change with the size of the text button, so it scales with the button. And we're just gonna make the text for this, we're just gonna call it generate, because we're gonna be using our button to generate a random color, because that's what we're making, right? So now we got our main frame. I'm just gonna call this a main frame, because that's our main frame. And then this can be our generate button. I think I'm just gonna call it generate. I don't know why. I thought I put a capital G, but there we go. So it's not too hard to create GUI. I mean, if you really want to make nice looking GUI, the thing to keep in mind is to not use like 20 different colors. Usually you want to try and stick to a color palette with like a few colors and not make them so like highly different from each other, keep them kind of similar. So now we're going to add a text label, and this is kind of explanatory as it's really just a label for text, and it will hold text, and we can, you know, change its size similar to the other ones. So with our text label, we are going to make it pretty much the same size of our generate button, but we're going to make the Y a little bit bigger. So I'm going to just copy over the size to this, but that didn't work because I don't know what I'm doing. Copy the size from our button over to this, so that way we got a good starting point. And you'll see it help us line them up a little bit. And I'm going to make, actually we're going to make its, we'll keep it like that. And we'll make its Y the same size. But you'll see, since Y is less than X, it'll kind of do this. So say if we wanted to make it perfectly square, we can use size constraint. And we can either make it based off the X or the Y. And I'm just going to do Y. And you can see it kind of squared it. But actually I'm going to do X here, just to make it seem a little bit better. Now this is kind of big. Do I want it this big? It's alright, it'll work. We'll just put it up here a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same background color as our button, so our GUI looks like it kind of matches and has a kind of a proper color palette here. And we're going to turn down course radius a lot because this is way too much. Maybe something like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make our text scales kind of like the other one, like that, I guess. And it doesn't really need to be bold. And now what we're going to do, this is going to be our color label, so we're just going to call this color label, and this will pretty much display the color code that we have. We could actually make this a text box, so that way they could highlight and copy the color, but it's not like super important. I guess I can show you that after we make it for the first time, because I kind of just want to get this made already. So because I'm doing a lot of explaining here and scripting or GUI making, but we got a frame with our text label and our text button, and you see it has some default effects when we hover over it and when we click it. And what we're going to do now is we added a local script, and you're always going to want to pretty much always will want to use a local script for GUI. It puts less stress on the server, and it's better practice because the only person seeing the GUI 99% of the time will be the local players. So really local script is all that's necessary for it. And there might be some other use cases where you might need the local player or something like that. So that's always good to remember. And I'm just going to call this color handler, so it's going to be handling our color generator. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a reference to our frame, so that way we have that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do frame.generates to get our button. And now what we can do is mouse button one click. Now what this event does is it fires when they left click on the GUI button. So button has like some built-in events which make it really easy for obviously detecting clicking. So we can take a click and we can use this for a function. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a random color. obviously we're just going to use math.random for this. So, and we're going to get a random number from 1 to 255. We don't need the 1 because it'll automatically default the minimum to 1 if we only give it 1 value. And now all we gotta do is index our frame, and we're going to get our color label, and we're going to set its background color to be our random color that we just made, right? And then we can also set its text to be the background color too. What the hell? Hold on. Alright, so yeah, we're color label, and now what we want to do is get its text, and then we'll just set it equal to, and we'll toString it, so that way it converts it to a string. I don't know if that's really necessary for this, but we're going to do that. And then we're going to concatenate it. We could do something like RGB and then add a parenthesis. String.format would probably be better for this, but I don't care enough to try and explain that right now. So we're just going to do that. And now what it'll do is obviously every time it's clicked, it'll create a new random color. And then it'll set the background color of our text label to that random color, and also set the text to that random color, so that way we can see the RGB value of the color in case that we like it and we want to save it or something. So now all we have to do is just press play, and it should work fine, right? So we click generate, and you'll see it worked. It's giving us decimals, which is interesting, but you can see we're getting a lot of cool colors in here. I always like doing this because there's always like, somehow it always finds really cool looking colors that I never am able to like manage to make or find on my own. But you see every time we click it, no, epilepsy warning, my bad, but you know, every time we click it, it gives us a new value. It's kind of annoying that the values are always decimals here. Why is it like that? It shouldn't be like that. What did I do wrong? I don't know what I did wrong, honestly. I don't know why it's like that. Maybe it's because I'm toStringing it. I don't think it's gonna work though. I don't think you can concatenate it if it's a color 3, but we'll try it. No, it didn't. Hold on, let me look in our player GUI. So you can see in the player service, once we join, here's our player, and under here is our player GUI, and you can see it's our clicker GUI here. Or not our clicker GUI, that's the wrong one. Color generator, mainframe, and then we got generate, and we got color label. You can see its background color is clearly not the colors that it's given us, right? Even though it's not working right now. But you can see its background color currently is purple. But if you go into StarterGui, and we go and check its color label, it's obviously the default color. So you can think of the StarterGui as being like a template for the future GUI for when someone joins the game. I don't know why toString is working the way it is. I thought it would save the number. What we could do is make it really messy. So we can do something like this with I think we can index it with R. I don't know. I really don't know what I'm doing right now. I thought this would be easy, okay? I don't understand what's going on. I don't have an explanation for why they decided to make this so difficult. But let's see if this works. I don't know. I've never really messed around with color 3 this much, but if this doesn't work, I don't really care that much. So we'll click it, and it looks like it's kind of working. I have no idea what's going on now. Hold on, let me see what its text says. Yeah, it's definitely not still working right. Still not working right. For some reason, it's like it's like really going crazy now. So, alright, I give up on this. I don't know why it's like that. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a pro scripter. I'm just garbage. I'm just an idiot. But anyways, so that's how that works, you know. Cool random color generator. The RGB part doesn't work too well, but that doesn't matter. We don't need to worry about that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to make a script on your own. So I'm going to disable this, and I'm going to enable a new GUI, and this is like a little clicker. So now what I'm going to do pretty much is ask you to make a clicker game. So you see we have a leader stats with clicks, and whenever you change this, you can see our clicks goes up. And you could even go as far as to add something like a little upgrade button if you wanted to. Try and challenge yourself to add an upgrade button or something. But you'll see also once we go to the server, it doesn't let me see leader stats, but we can go into the players, so we can access their leader stats on the server kind of like this. And you can see the value is 20. So it's not a client-sided thing, it's actually server-sided. So this means that you're going to have to use the info from my last video with remote events and also server and client changes to figure out how to make it so that once you click this, it also changes on the server, so all the other players can see your clicks, and the server also sees the clicks, so it recognizes it, right? So that's really it's not something too complicated. If you want to, you could try and challenge yourself and add like some upgrade buttons to increase how much you get per click or something like that if you really want to. But that's pretty much it for now, and I'll show you the solution in a few seconds. I'll let you pause the video and try and make it on your own if you want, but I'm going to go over the solution now. So really the GUI is pretty simple. I just have a text button here. I didn't even bother making a frame, but just a text button that says click me, and it has a UI corner to make it look some kind of better, I guess. It doesn't really look very good, but in here a local script, nothing really too crazy. The local script is just getting the mouse button one click event, and with that it goes into replicated storage and goes inside of our remotes folder, and it fires our click event to the server. So now we go inside the server script, and you'll see we have a few things here. We have our player added event, which with a function that is creating leader stats for us, and it creates our click value and starts the value at 0, obviously. And then for our click event on the server, it takes in the player, and then once it does, what it does is it uses the player, because obviously the leader stats parent is a player, so we can just do player that leader stats and then get their clicks, and then change the property, the value property, and we'll increase the value property by 1 inside of our server script. If we did it on a local script, then only we would see the change to our leader stat. All the other players in the game wouldn't see that we have like 2 billion clicks or something ridiculous, right? They wouldn't see how many clicks that we had, because we only changed it on the client. But now that we have a remote event, we are changing it on the server, and all the other players can see it. And we could even use something like data store service to save it, even though I haven't gone over that yet. That'll be a future video, but yeah. So that's pretty much it for GUI. It's not too complicated. Obviously there's a lot of things that I didn't go over, like image labels and text image buttons and other constraints like UI size, text size constraints and size constraints and all kinds of things for GUI. There's a lot of things, but you could always look into that. There's a lot of information on the dev forum or on the API documentation about using GUI and things like that. So it's just something to get you a basic idea of using GUI and what you can do with it. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.